Welcome back, everybody. The Downers Grove Village Council is reconvened in the committee room. With that, I'll turn the floor over to Village Manager David Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor White. This is a continuing discussion of future downtown zoning and other regulations changes. Thanks, everybody, for coming out tonight. Stan Popovich, our Community Development Director, will lead us through continued discussion. For those of you who were here last time when we got a late start and then we didn't have time for public comment until the very end, we've actually learned from that experience. And so there's a point pretty early on in the presentation where Stan will break and allow public comment. That'll take place right after the recap of the recent meetings that we hosted focusing on downtown stakeholders. So with that, I'd like to introduce Stan Popovich, our Community Development Director.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening, council members. Good evening, members of the audience. As Manager Fieldman noted, we're talking about our downtown development regulatory framework here tonight, our second meeting that we've had on this. I've posted an agenda on the side here to sort of explain what we're going over and what we'll be talking about. So first we'll be reviewing the project very briefly, recap the council meeting we had in August, talk about the two stakeholder meetings we held earlier this month, go over a couple of topics for further discussion, permitted special uses and architectural design control, and then talk about parking regulations. So as you all know, the project is based off the comprehensive plan, recommendations of the comprehensive plan, and development of framework, bulk regulations, zoning regulations, setbacks, height, all those items. So we've had a few meetings about this, and Comprehensive Plan Committee and Plan Commission talked about this as well. At our last, so we're already on to item number 2 here, so we're moving along pretty good. At our last August meeting with council, we talked about our 4 potential zoning districts here, the downtown core, principally around Main and Curtis, the downtown edge 1, surrounding the core, downtown edge 2, a little bit further out, and then downtown transition. The maps are shown here, and then we've also posted a couple of the other maps, same maps on the walls as well for viewing over there as well. We also talked about the geographic boundaries of each of those items. Each of those districts, height restrictions in those districts we talked about. Some are getting a little taller, some are getting smaller. Density allowances in those districts, so how many units per acre can you build on a particular property? And then also we talked about setbacks and what those setbacks would be for each of the different zoning classifications. We did come to some concurrence on those items, but then council decided that it was important to get additional public input. And so based on that direction, staff held 2 meetings for downtown stakeholders. Prior to those meetings, we created this webpage that you could go to and view, and you could get a lot of information there. The video we posted all the new maps that we created, opportunities to attend a couple of different meetings, the meeting here tonight as well. And then you could compare your zoning as well by doing a simple address search. You can pop up what was going to happen, what was potentially going to happen to your property. And so those are some of the pages that we see here tonight with sort of the yellow tab at the top. I know Commissioner Earl's got one right here, and they're out in the hall as well, if anybody wanted to see those as well. So we got a lot of feedback from the downtown stakeholders. We had 17 folks participate over the 2 meetings, one on a Monday evening and one in the middle of the day on a Wednesday. So we had some really good feedback that way. And we had some particular areas of concern that those residents and business owners came to talk about. And they primarily focused on when we were transitioning primarily from a downtown business zoning use, current zoning classification to a downtown transition area. And some of those concerns we heard were about the reduction in height, the reduction in density, and then the additional setbacks that's going to also incorporate then if those proposed changes were incorporated. So that would reduce potentially the buildable area on a plot, and then reduce that area for also some parking ability to put some parking spaces on the lot as well. So those are some of the concerns we heard. We heard some concerns about loss of height in the downtown core area here, just south of the tracks on Main Street. And we also heard concerns about the removal of drive-throughs in that area as well. So those were some of the key comments that we heard out of it. It was a very well-attended meeting, and we were able to speak one-on-one with people and to talk about those and some of those concerns. I do see some of those residents and business owners that were here for those meetings here again tonight. And so at this point, Mayor Pro Tem, if you'd like to open it up to hear some of their comments and get the start from the horse's mouth, I'd turn it back over to you.
Okay. As was stated, the last time we did this, we all talked amongst ourselves until very late into the evening. And those of you who spent time to come here really didn't have a chance to speak. So, at this point, any member who who's here this evening, any person in the audience that wishes to address us regarding any, these issues that have been raised, I invite you to stand up, state your name, and let us know what you're thinking. Okay.
919 Rogers, my friend. Okay. Now, the last meeting with the village man, with the board wasn't here, the village manager, and we were discussing the height requirements and the setbacks and that. And one of the things, my concern was, right now, the building on Warren Avenue is basically a 5-story brick building from our side. Warren's is 4-story. But with the foundation, it's a 5-story building. You're talking close to 70 foot without the additional height in there. My problem is, you were saying with the easement in the back of 20 feet, my problem was the fact, any one of you, if you take 20 feet away from this building, turn around and look back, and picture a 5-story brick wall. How many people, if you develop in that area, is going to want that for a backyard? I mean, it's going to be like a prison. You'd be like in a prison exercise yard. Developers would turn around and say, well, we're not going to do, we can't do anything with that. Or if they do develop it, people that are going to want to buy it are going to say,
well, let me interrupt him 1 second. I'm his neighbor.
Tell us your name then,
My name
please.
is Cindy Rizzo.
Okay.
Our lots are only 100 deep.
These lots up here?
yeah.
So you're taking 20 feet off the back end, and you're taking frontage, because right now, we can go up to the sidewalk. So I guess our concern is, what can you possibly put in that area?
So you want the setbacks reduced, that's what I'm hearing?
Well, the setback reduced and...
The height.
And, well, not only the height, but the easement in the back. You already allowed the building on Warren to go to the 0 property line. Right next door to me is the Tivoli parking lot. That is also right up against our property line. So now, with only a 50-foot wide property, you have a setback, or a side setback of 5 feet on each side. There isn't enough room for a house and a driveway to go along with that. Right now, our garage was built some 80, some 90, almost 90 years ago, and it's all the way back at the back end of the property. If you had to move that 20 feet, you couldn't put a 2-car garage in there. I mean, there's no way. Even if you turned it around and put it behind the house, that would give you your 20 feet, and you'd be sitting there, you'd be, like I said, I mean...
There's
no side, nothing in the back that would allow you to feel like you're claustrophobic. I mean, like I said, it'd be...
So you want more buildable area on the lot?
More buildable area, and the height requirement, since you've already got a 5-story building right behind it. Since you already have to reduce
Where are we on this, Nick?
So go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, so you're right here. So you're right in this area. This is Washington, this is Rogers. So you're right in that area right there. This is the new 922 development. The Tivoli Theater is right here, and the parking lot's right here. So you're right here in this area.
Okay, and Washington here is going to be 70 feet.
As proposed, this is downtown transition, which would be the same as what's currently proposed for you as well.
Okay, so I'm
Which
here.
is three
Which is
stories.
3 stories, correct.
The tracks are here.
This track's right there, yeah.
Okay, so where is the, what's it called? The media place right now? You know, where the, there's a service station. Where's the service station?
Was it
No,
the
the
corner?
service station's right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the service station. Across the street right here, that's going to be 70 feet.
That's proposed to be DE 1, so that would be 72 feet, 6 stories.
Okay,
yes.
so we're going to be surrounded by 70 feet all the way here, 70 feet, 70 feet. And we're going to be kind of sunk in as residents. And if with the setbacks, what could we possibly build in a 50 by 100 building, lot space?
So you'd be looking at, are you saying you want the zoning to be the same as the
Why wouldn't all of this be the same?
How many of the fellow property owners in that section there feel the same
It's
way?
myself, it's Mike, and Mr. Johnson from the Tivoli, which he's already got 70 feet. I'm sure he would like 70 feet.
So basically, that rectangle that's marked DT, you want that to be the same as the remainder of the block. And if I, let me repeat back what I heard, because you can tell me if I understood it right. That what's proposed with the side yard, front yard, and rear yard setbacks,
It's impossible.
the allowable buildable area is so small, you can't fit anything in there.
You would have to put a shoebox in there.
I think I understand what you're saying, okay.
Whether it be, you know, as a commercial or, you know, residential, I mean, nobody's going to be able to build anything, even if somebody tried to buy this strip and build multi-family units. in
Well, if
there.
they combined it all, the side setbacks would merge together, but
But
that,
Mr.
Right.
Johnson owns the properties over here already.
Yeah, he bought the end
He
of the block.
owns
Plus,
these and up to here. So it's really our two properties and a parking lot.
so it's, yeah.
No, actually, it's three properties,
Yeah.
because it's Shoelady.
Right.
Yeah, there's three properties.
So it's, like I said, if-
So we're kind of our three properties are getting swallowed up. Because, well,
I mean, basically what it's going to do is devalue our properties, because the developer is going to turn around and say, well, gee, I'm very limited on what I'm going to be able to build here. So, we're going to offer you, minimum money for these properties, if you'll sell to us. I mean, we won't have any value left at all for what.
well, let me speak briefly about where we stand in the process on this, and you can ask me further questions about that. I feel comfortable, I understand what you're saying. I can talk to my fellow council, my fellow commissioners, see if they understand it as well. We're not making a decision this evening.
Right.
I'm not prepared to make a decision this evening. It's not even first reading. If you watch the other meetings, we have all these conversations, then we have a first reading, and then even after that, we vote. So we're a long ways away from a
We
vote.
have, like I said, I mean, we've already,
But-
this is third meeting.
But it's important that you be here.
Right,
Yeah.
that's why I said, I just wanted to,
Yeah.
let you know that this, this
So I think-
is our concerns, that, that this would basically
Okay.
destroy any chance.
I do want to, I do want to say that there's probably maybe a half dozen, maybe not quite that many, actually, this map here. The areas that are circled in blue are the areas where similar concerns, where these types of things exist. So if you're comfortable, I think, unless any of us have questions for you, we know where you're coming from. I don't know yet where we're going, but we know where you're coming from, and we need to think about it more, talk about it more. Anything else you want to add about that? Anybody in council have questions? Yes.
Oh, no, not for them, actually, Stan, just to the north.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Is that an apartment building or condo building? I forget what's just to the north of these properties we're talking about.
At Washington Rogers,
across
there's
Rogers.
single-family homes going up towards the park.
Okay.
Across the park.
Across the street.
And then across
Across
the
the
street,
street.
there's
Apartment building or
apartments.
apartment
And then
building?
apartments, and then we got single-family.
I think they're condos.
Principally single-family there. And on these two corners at Ryan Place, there's, I believe, a three-story apartment building on both corners.
3 stories.
Or maybe two and a garden unit.
Okay. All right, thanks. You're welcome.
Okay, other people have similar issues for their parts of downtown. Tell us your name, please.
My name's Pat Smith.
Yeah.
I own a building at 5116 Forest. Covers here.
We're bringing that much money from a lot of them.
Page 116 Forest, Dave, you want to help us out here?
Yeah, I see Forest, find Forest, find the tracks,
This would be
here.
5100.
right there.
yeah.
Across from the library.
Okay, this little dot there is Carla's. If you go 20 feet from the back and 20 feet from the front, there isn't anything.
Oh, she'll put a
left.
flagpole up.
She could put a pup tent there. That's about it, and it has to be triangular. I've got the second. Again, 20 feet off the front, 20 feet behind it is a gazebo and some open space that's there anyway, and a building that's a lot taller than 3 stories. And then behind that is,
So you're saying the setbacks won't work for you?
I think, we ought to be D1 or D2, not transition. I mean, it's like you're putting a lower valley in the middle of taller buildings, that's not a transition, it looks kind of funny. The best use for that land is obviously for those 4 units that belong to some developer who put something other than 4 1850s houses there. 1840s. But,
Have to move them somewhere then.
the houses?
No.
The creek runs through there.
Okay. Let me say what I said to the people that spoke a couple minutes ago. I feel comfortable, I understand what you're saying. If there's other commissioners here that have questions about it, we'll take this all into account. You need to keep paying attention because we're not making a decision tonight, we're not voting. It's not even what we call technically a first reading, so we're still a ways away from making a decision. But I think I saw the manager making notes, I believe the community developer is making notes, so I think you've been heard. But don't lose track of the process because, I'm not encouraging you to lose track of the process, but check back to make sure that we're taking those concerns into account as we modify and revise these plans as we go forward. But I'm comfortable, I heard what you're saying.
Did I just say something?
Absolutely.
Okay, we bought this little...
I'm sorry, can you say your name, please?
Sure, Ann Carla. I bought this little house like 100 years ago. And Betsy Downer's, I think her name was Betsy Downer, she lived there. Mrs. Downer lived next door. She built the house for her daughter. Her daughter died early, after childbirth, I believe. So we've owned it all these years, and we love it. It's like an antique house. It's only 20 feet deep, a 20-foot so thick. It would be puff in the air. There would be nothing left of it. Sort of like Kansas City, wind blows and it goes off to Alice in Wonderland's place. So I don't see how you can do that to us.
Well, I think what I would say is that these regulations are more of a generic nature, and the reason we're having these meetings is to look for specific quirks in how Downers Grove was laid out 150 years ago, so that we can find where doing it by the book, so to speak, doesn't really work so well. And that's why we're doing
It's
this.
like we're real people,
Well, I hope I'm always a real person.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
What was your
address? 5120.
Yeah, these are all the houses across west of the library. Really narrow lots. Yeah, it's problematic.
4 little white houses.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else that came to see us this evening that would like a chance to speak to us and to staff about your thoughts about about these zoning issues? Does anybody in the council want to talk about what they've heard thus far? And then we'll let staff continue with their presentation. I think you're back up.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So we're down to item number 4 on the agenda. So we're going to be talking a little bit about permitted and special uses. So permitted uses are uses that somebody can come in today and open tomorrow. Special uses require village council approval, so there's a little bit more review of those items. So currently we have 2 zoning districts, downtown business and downtown transition. The business use, as it's portrayed, is more of a business use. So we allow shops, restaurants, dry cleaners, art studios, daycares, offices, apartments, and condos in the downtown business zoning district. So principally commercial, but we do have some residential allowed in there. And the transition, it's a transition area, so we move from more of a business-oriented use to single-family residential neighborhoods around the district, around the downtown. So you can see we allow more uses that are more compatible with single families. We allow single-family, duplex, townhomes, apartments. We also allow offices, daycare, small art studios, and small beauty salons as well. So as we transition out of those areas, we get the more or less the bulk of the buildings is coming down through bulk, and then also through the uses they become more blendable with single-family residential. So as we look at the 4 new zoning districts, what we see is we're trying to maintain a business core throughout the core and the edge 1 and edge 2, and then in the transition try to maintain that transition to the residential areas here. So you'll see we do have very similar uses moving throughout. Now the daycare is one of them in the packet that we've noticed is not in the downtown core, but it's in the edge 1 and the edge 2 because there tends to be more space to be able to have a daycare with some outdoor play areas for the children, which is required in the zoning ordinance. And then we move into a recommendation of a bed and breakfast in these areas as well. And then we go into the transition area, we carry a lot of these same regulations down and uses down from the transition to the transition. It's principally how we meld these two and split them out into 4. And so these are some of the key principal uses that we see that are permitted in those zoning districts. Now, the zoning ordinance really has this land use table that we use for all of our zoning districts. So whether you're in the downtown, on Ogden Avenue, down 75th Street, wherever, it's a big table. And in the old zoning ordinance, before we updated in 2014, it was by list. So I had to look for a restaurant. I had to look for a haberdashery. I like to always throw that one out there. But so now what we've done is we've categorized them so it's easier for staff to make interpretations when somebody comes up with a new use that we just haven't envisioned, instead of having to look at the list and go, it's not on the list, you're not in. Now we've categorized these things into items such as building services, which are like contractor shops, or personal improvement services, which is a fancy term for gyms and yoga studios. So there are, in these use tables, we've categorized them to make it easier for staff to interpret. Sometimes it's a little harder for folks to be able to find something. There's a paragraph that explains them all and staff knows what they are, and we can help them find it. But it's just a good way for us to interpret and to be able to categorize things when they come in, when they're not specifically listed. And so you can see in this use table, the DB and the DT is here, and then we have the 4 proposed districts on the right-hand side. And so this is how we've determined what sort of uses are permitted and special uses. And in most instances where they've been special uses in the downtown business, we've maintained them as special uses in the core and in the edge as well as we went out through. So we didn't try to change anything to make it from a special to a permitted use. Now the difference with uses comes into play is if you change from a downtown business district to a transition district, that's obviously going to change the use allowances because you're going from more of a commercial area into more of a transition into residential areas as well. So at this point, I'll offer and answer any questions that I can about uses.
I just wanted to sort of add a little bit. The last meeting, we had just started to talk about these issues as a council in the community, and specific questions came up about breweries. I think we addressed the bed and breakfast that came up. There was a couple others about transportation-related uses. So we're happy to answer any questions the council may continue to have, trying to get some direction as we move forward on this.
Once again, do any of our visitors have comments or questions regarding permitted uses in the various parts of downtown before we turn to, yes? State your name again, please.
Cindy Rizzo.
Okay, thank you.
So in the downtown transition area with single-family duplex and all the things that are listed, specifically going back to the map that I'm supposed to be going to transition, I don't know how some of those uses could actually be in effect due to parking restrictions on our streets. The bed and breakfast, when I actually moved into our property, I had to take out my whole backyard to put parking in back of my building. There's a lot of restrictions down that street. We've got a lot of parking from the Tivoli. So as far as having a beauty salon, I don't know where all the people will park.
Let me give that a shot, and staff can jump in. Downtown transition is more than that one particular block. And it may be that a given parcel within the transition zone is not suitable for certain types of businesses. There's just not enough area.
Right.
But there's other parts of the transition area where there's room for that. So you got to make all the rules. So if you don't have enough room for parking, you probably can't have that kind of business. Even if it's a permitted use, you still got to follow the other rules. So your parcel being small,
Doesn't have hardly any of these proposed uses
That's
are
another-
even available.
that's another reason to change it to a different classification possibly and allow a different type of use.
Okay.
I think it may be helpful and informative to jump ahead in our program. Stan was going to talk about parking changes later, but I think since it's come up, we could probably just hit that right now. Everybody get that?
I apologize. So with the existing parking regulations, again, using a similar slide with existing and proposed, right now in the downtown business zoning district, the only uses that require parking are residential units and large medical offices at 1.4 parking spaces per unit.
and then 4.5. There's no other parking required for anything, any other business use, commercial use in the downtown business zoning classification. Currently, when we come to downtown transition, we require 2 spaces per residential unit, and then it varies based on the type of use. So if you're an office, it's 3.5 parking spaces per 1,000. If you're a medical, it's 4.5. If you're a theater, there's certain parking requirements for that in the transition. If you're a dry cleaner, there's certain parking requirements for that. And so what we've tried to do and what we're looking at doing is maintaining sort of these downtown business parking requirements for both the core, the edge, and the edge 2, where we're still in the downtown more commercial-oriented areas. So there's really only parking required for residential and medical, just based on the turnover and how many people come to a medical office and stay for a while, and then trying to get people in and out. And then in the transition, maintaining that 2 for residential, but then maintaining the requirements for parking as they're currently written. So we're not any proposed changes to the parking requirements. And the parking is in the zoning ordinance, I believe it's Article 7 if I'm correct. And there's a use table that shows what the uses are and how many parking spaces you would have to provide for those uses. And then there are provisions, if you have an existing office and another office is moving in, you don't have to provide additional parking if it's the same use for a same use. But if you were to go from an office and only need 2 spaces to a restaurant and need 20 spaces on Ogden Avenue, then there's provisions for that to accomplish that as well. So there's some intricacies with changing uses for parking requirements.
So on the point here that the proposed downtown transition, there would be on-site parking required for many of the permitted uses in the district, right?
Correct, yes.
I think that goes to the question, this particular block may not be well suited for a DT classification. Okay. Anybody else from the public who's here before we keep moving forward? Okay. What's up next?
I believe we were going to go to architectural design control here now.
Are we going to scroll through the agenda on the right, or are we going to actually talk about like uses, for instance? What's the intention for tonight?
We had proposed some breaks. Actually, if you want to talk about uses, we just presented that, so that would be appropriate.
I'll revisit some of the stuff I had mentioned last time. This is not changed from before, right?
It is not.
Bigger version of my eyes. There were some DT in particular uses that I thought maybe we should add some both permitted and special uses in the DT areas. So I guess I'd like to just get these into the record for consideration. Obviously, as Bill described, we're not deciding this evening. So working down the list here, grooming and veterinary care in the DT, thinking there should be some provisions for that, whether they're permitted or special, we could get to. But I think that some of those areas, at least as they're currently mapped, it would be entirely reasonable to have either grooming or veterinary care opportunities. We talked about this research service. I guess I need some more definition on what research service means and what it could mean. That sounds very much like it could be an office-related kind of an activity that could happen. If it's marketing research, for instance, you could see a marketing research company operating out of a converted hall, for example.
Can I read what it says for you?
Yeah, but then tell me how you might interpret that.
Sure.
That's the $1 million question.
It's uses engaged in scientific research and testing services leading to the development of new products and processes.
Yeah.
Such uses resemble office buildings or campuses and do not include the mass production, distribution, or sale of products. Research services do not produce odors, dust, noise, vibration, or other external impacts that are detectable beyond the property lines of the subject property. So market research would work. It could be a small science lab that was doing something as long as there were no odors and stuff like that. So that's how we would generally interpret that.
So that, I could see how we would want to consider allowing those in some of the DT areas. The goal of these things, guys, is not because I think I know what should do it, but I think what we want to try and do is create a situation where our downtown is as attractive as possible for business enterprise to get, to want to locate. It's a challenging thing in our downtown to constantly fill space and to create an environment that's vibrant. So whenever a landowner or a business owner decides to move on for whatever reason, I think we'd like to have as much flexibility as possible in backfilling that with whatever might be in demand. So I'm generally trying to loosen, if you will, the P's and S's in the DT column. Going down a little bit more, restaurant, wine boutique, again, in our DT area. I think to some of the things that I see in other communities, Glen Ellen and Naperville in particular, Long Grove's another one, there may be some really logical situations where you would have that type of use in a current DT building. Keep in mind, we've always got this secondary set of rules about zoning, so it doesn't necessarily mean it fits. To some of your questions, because it's zone DT and use is permissible, to actually operate that business would still require meeting a variety of other rules, like parking, for instance. So that doesn't mean that every one of these properties could be a restaurant, but the idea that it's not right now at all, even a permitted or special use, is to me is bothersome. Moving on to same thing as financial service. That sounded to me a lot like research. You could see a financial service, your local whomever. I won't brand this thing, but you can certainly see that operate just like an attorney's group. And then some of the retail stuff. Actually, looking at that changed. Yeah, so convenience goods, consumer shopping. We actually added this line, guns and firearms. I'm thinking that all of those retail sale things, we might want to consider a special use opportunity in DT. Not to pick any particular product that might be for sale, but how we define retail sales. Retail sales can be an awful lot of things as long as it's just really truly to the end user public. If that's how we're using the word retail, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a convenience store or it's a bike. It can be a lot of things. And it dovetails into this. Down we got a section called under industrial, artisan industrial. I think I was trying to describe before these. You're really on that edge when you think about. And somebody help me with the name, Linda. Linda's not. She's ignoring me on purpose. I didn't hear me too. What's the name of the brush?
Boarding
Brush. Thank you. You're treading awfully close to this. Is that artisan? Is it industrial? Is it retail sales? What is it exactly? And so the idea of making allowance for special use in some sort of retail activity in some of the DT areas is something I'd like us to really think through. And that's the end of my list.
So I just want to recap, make sure we captured that. Adding uses to the proposed DT district in the permitted category: research services, restaurant and wine boutiques, financial services. In the special use category, consider retail or artisan or the maker type uses, and then one that could be either permitted or special: grooming and veterinary care. We capture that right, Bob?
Capture that right. I don't know if I know whether they're P's or S's at this point.
Right.
But they're trying to add to the uses that might be possible in some of the DT areas in those categories.
At this point, I want to jump in with some comments that will apply both to the use discussion and later to, it's a sort of a preamble to where I'm looking at some of the architectural design issues. And it has more about the larger process. Page 2 of our September staff report and page 3 of the staff report for this evening has a great little flow chart. I blew it up here. It says what it is that we're doing here, and that this council's already adopted the comprehensive plan. That's done. And now our task is to adopt a regulatory framework and follow on by a zoning ordinance that actually implements the vision that's found in the comprehensive plan. So as we evaluate uses, as we evaluate design standards, things like that, I'll go back to the one rule of design that I love best, is form follows function. What's our goal? And our goal is to implement the desired state of downtown. Turn the vision that's found in the comprehensive plan, turn that vision into reality. And there's many different roads that might get us there, and I don't want to get bogged down into one particular road or another particular road as long as we end up at the final goal. At least for me, The desired state of downtown is well articulated by the 2008 pattern book. And I'll pull out a few things. It's the symbolic heart of our community. It's pedestrian-focused rather than automobile-focused. It's a place where people want to spend time on foot. And it's going to require synergy between a variety of, you have to balance a lot of different things. Architectural details, mixture of land uses, pedestrian considerations, appropriate building heights, street walls and storefronts, compact street grid, public spaces and gathering areas. So as we talk about uses, you know, this is, I'm not decided yet. You know, first floor real estate office, first floor bank maybe, first floor stockbroker may not help get us to the vision that we want. Maybe it will. We have to decide about that. But I'm not comfortable just saying today, well, the free market decides. I mean, I think there has to be a higher level of planning than that. How far we go with that, I'm not done thinking about that yet. But the goal is to create a place where people want to spend time on foot. That's why I just blunt, I don't think the DuPage medical option promotes that vision of downtown, personally. It's a great business, there's lots of places I like to see them. I don't think that particular business promotes the vision that I want for downtown, which I think is found in the 2008 plan. But anyways, as we talk about all these things, you know, whether design review is the right way to go or not, I don't know. But I think that's something we just have to keep going back to what the goal is, which in my opinion is to create in reality the vision that's found in the pattern book and incorporated in the comprehensive plan.
That's a great segue, Mayor White. And Stan has got queued up for us as a discussion of sort of the architectural and building features. But before we go there, I just want to make sure, were there any other council member discussions on permitted or special uses in the district?
I'm wondering about the special use for drive-in or drive-through facilities. We don't allow it anyplace else in the downtown, but in downtown transition we do. But we're talking about walkable, and we want walkable, and drive-in, drive-through is not walkable. So is this something we want to keep, or is this something we want to go away?
Can we pull up the map of the zoning districts? Yeah. So Commissioner, you're talking about in the downtown transition district?
Yeah, I'm looking at the chart here. It's not, the only place it's allowed as a special use is the DT district, which would be the outlier edges.
So currently what it is that there's a bank here with a drive-through, and that's currently zoned downtown business. Okay. So that's a lawful non-conforming use. And in the current zoning classification, and then there's another drive-through
right
at Burlington right there. In the current zoning classification, those are both lawful non-conforming. And then in the proposed downtown transition and the downtown core, we wouldn't permit any drive-through uses, so no new drive-through uses would be permitted, but the existing ones would still maintain the lawful non-conforming use.
Right. Anything we change now, everything that's there already is still going to be legal non-conforming, for lack of a better term. So it's not like we're making it go away. But if the land were to redevelop, they weren't going to redevelop in. I know there's an overlap if one use goes out and one bank goes out and the other one goes in a week or 2 weeks or whatever, or a month. It's still the same use. I get that. But the question is if it goes away and it goes on the market and it's sold, that doesn't go along with it.
Correct.
And I'm wondering if we want to leave that in the downtown transition or not. If we have the, I mean.
Right, so technically, people's properties as far out as Carpenter Street, right, could apply for a special use for a drive-through.
Right.
That's the concern, right? And other places too, but as an example. Okay.
I mean, now you're letting them be in places where maybe we don't want them either. You know, as a special use, yes, I know it still has to come to the council as a special use, but it's a question: do we want to open the door?
Could we? This is maybe a legal question. Only permit special uses for property that adjoins Main Street?
I've seen those techniques used.
We could put some sort of regulation.
That's interesting.
Because I mean, to be very blunt, the West Suburban Bank I don't think there's going to be a walkable pedestrian destination south of that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me.
Right, no.
And I'm big on getting rid of drive-throughs, but that one doesn't bother me.
No, I understand, because you're talking about the outer fringe of it, but then again, once again, we're talking about everything in DT. So there's a lot of DT up there, and do we want to open the door?
But rather than naming a street, DT that borders, that has frontage on a county highway, a county that does something like that.
Yeah, and that'd be like 4 or 5 properties, it looks like there, so that's something we could consider. That might address the concern that Mark's bringing up.
Well, but going to Bill's point, I think, Marge's point is spot on. And I think Bill, it goes to speaks to what you were talking about, or what are we trying to create? These various zoning changes that we're proposing are not about regulating what's there today. They're about when change comes, which it's going to. What do we hope it will become, right?
Yes.
And I don't think, I've been part of a conversation in 9 years, evaluating comp plans twice, evaluating pattern books once, where we've come back thinking, any group of people has come, residents or councils have come back thinking, what we need to do is make sure we carve out some space for drive-throughs downtown. That's just not part of our conversation in any sense. And so, while there certainly are some, and I know we're not trying to zone them out per se, I think we are saying, I think we have said in a consistent voice for 9 years and 3 ad hoc committees and everything else, that generally we don't want drive-through activities in the downtown that we're trying to make as walkable as possible. I'm inclined to think, we'll not decide tonight, but I'm certainly inclined to think that Marge's point is exactly right. We probably ought to just take them out.
I see a lot of heads nodding there. I think we'll bring that back for...
We're not deciding tonight, but I
Yeah.
think those are legitimate points.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's important, too, to note some of the initial conversations this evening, that idea that these changes don't prevent the existing use from continuing is really important for everybody in this room tonight and that are watching to hear and understand. It doesn't mean we're going to somehow compel a change of use or a redevelopment. It just means that when it comes at some point, we're hoping that it's different. And that's just a reality about long-term planning for a downtown area.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on land uses before we go on to the architectural design issues? Next up.
Find my space here. Okay, so as Commissioner White there's a variety of approaches, and it's really important just to remember that we have to pick what's best for what's best for the community. There's pros and cons for each approach. We currently have an approach where we have design guidelines, which are voluntary until they become mandatory as they come up to the village council. So once it's something where it's a special use or planning and development that comes before you, it's in staff's report about how they meet or do not meet the design guidelines that we set place, and then it's ultimately in some of the standards of approval whether they meet the plans that the village has as well. So we have to remember that to their guidelines, but then once they come up to the village council level, they're really mandatory requirements. The design guidelines were developed in January 2009. They're based on the pattern book that Mayor Pro Tem White mentioned today, and they're administered by staff. Staff reviews the developments, and the key things that we look at is the building base, which is number 1 on the bottom there, the building middle, and the building top. So those are the 3 things that staff reviews and uses the guidelines to look at. So in the base, we're really looking for transparent windows. On the main core, you get people walking through, you have activity, articulated entry features, complementary building materials. EFIS and CMU are discouraged. We want to differentiate between important building features, whether it's an entry, it's a shop, it's a restaurant with some tables out front. And a horizontal expression to sort of establish the ground level. So when we have multiple story buildings, we want to make sure we establish a ground level. And so I'll show a few examples from the downtown. So this is the Acadia building here, and you can see we have a horizontal expression here with this band of masonry and stone there. We've got some good windows at the bottom there as well. Like go down the ground, there's some knee walls in there as well. So it's a really good way to do it. And then there's also some important features here where you see columns running all the way down through the building to articulate entrances as well. So that's how Acadia meets it in that instance, and this was prior to the design guidelines. If we look at 5100 Forest, which is going up right now, this really has an articulated entry here with this large glass area here coming in. I was at a planning conference, they talked about terminating vistas, and I almost jumped up and down and said, hey, we got one, we're doing one right now. It's just the planning geek in me coming out. But this is really good here with this interesting entry feature, the materials with the brick and the glass, and then some of the panels here. It really provides it here, especially across the front, and then this sort of up and down, which goes from the base down to the middle and all the way to the top as well. And then if we look at the middle of the building, so this is basically floors 1 through 3 or 4, you look for windows in rhythm, so that there's a pattern to it, and it's a rhythmic building. Visual interest, whether that's the lights and the lights are divided, the windows are divided into different things, whether it's just 6/1, you see some sills and lintels. You want to see appealing design through detailing and openings, massing, and how the building moves in and out. Articulate corner buildings, and then again, complementary building materials from the base up through the middle there as well. So if we look again at Acadia, we see windows in rhythm. We've got a thinner window, thicker window, and we got this column. Then we go thin window, thicker window, column, and it moves around the building. So you definitely see that pattern that way. And then we've got articulations where these balconies come out a little bit. We've got a little bit of cornice work there and some stones up here. So you really see it in this building as well, and how we pull those details out as well. If you look at the building in Main and Maple here that's going up, you can see that again here, how we got a rhythm to the building. We've got a column down, a column out, that comes down, another column, and we really move the massing of the building in and out with some juts for balconies sticking out a little bit there as well. So you see that sort of rhythm there with that going down Maple Avenue here, and you see it over here as well, where we got balcony, window, window, balcony, then window at the corner, and then when it flips it onto the Main Street side as well. So it looks this way, so you can achieve it either horizontally, or you can achieve it up and down, and architects decide to do it whichever way, but we just look at it to make sure that there's some rhythm to the building on that one. And then particularly with 5100 Forest, they've really done the corner articulation here really well with the windows and the paneling here to catch the corner of Forest and Gilbert. And then similarly here, you can see the pattern here where they've separated some of the materials here, where there's brick in some of this, and then the top floor it's paneling there as well. So it really changes the building up a little bit, adds a little bit of dimension to it, adds some visual interest. And again, we get rhythm to the windows that are on the Forest Avenue side, and this is the Gilbert Avenue side. And then you got some of these balconies that protrude out. So you really don't have just a massive wall straight up and down. You've got some ins and outs of the massing of the building is what we look at and look to see. And then at the top, we look for distinctive cornices and corners, and then also to screen the mechanical equipment. So we do that through a variety of manners. So you can see with Acadia again, you can see sort of the articulated and really extended out cornice here that pops out a few feet from the building that you can see there. And also you can see up on the top of the building here, you have a sort of a faux terrace, a faux trellis up at the top as well. With the Main and Maple building, you see again with these different roof lines that they have, and how this is one section's a little lower than the other one, and it brings it in and out that way, and then you have an extended overhang on the corners of those units as well, which help out bring some of the unique features out of the building. And then most of these parapets now are designed to screen the mechanical units, where they've built them tall enough so that the parapet extends above the flat part of the roof, so you'll screen the mechanical units via the parapet wall. And then again with 5100 Forest, you see the different roof lines here, the corner roof, which is arched to follow the corner treatment here. So a lot of very good differentiations on that. And then if I were to go back to the terminating vista photo, you can see there's a unique feature on the roof there as well. So that's a really good endpoint to Burlington Avenue. And then we also talk about facade elements as well. So this is everything from awnings and signs to outdoor cafes, protruding light fixtures, landscaping, benches, sort of the public area and the public features that the folks are going to see a lot of, and the balconies come into that as well. You can see with Acadia, we've got a lot of awnings here, down all throughout the building. You've got some landscaping here. This picture was probably taken in the early spring prior to Egg Harbor having the cafe out front, but there's activity on the street that people want to see, and it makes it more walkable, makes it more enjoyable for people to come out and enjoy the building, enjoy the town. If you look at Main and Maple, you see some landscaping along the facade there. It's a little hard to see, but there's light features here. There's an awning that wraps around the building some. So again, that's pulling sort of the first level, the ground floor down,
And it also creates some interest and attraction on that side of the building as well. And then if we go back to 5100 Forest, you can see there's landscaping here. The way the topography works, these can almost act as almost seat walls for people. So if you're waiting for somebody to pick up a ride, you might be able to sit there. Particularly with this building, there's a cut-in for some parking there, so people can park there, maybe wait for a ride, be picked up. And again, there's trees and there's activities on the spaces. You have the balconies that protrude out. There's light fixtures at the main entrance as well. So staff looks at all of these things and evaluates them and makes sure that they're meeting the design guidelines and that they meet the intent of that. Every architect is going to have a different design, so you sort of have to be open to allowing that individual expression of the architect to come through, but still making sure that we have all of those elements that we're looking for in the design guidelines.
Before we turn it back over to council and community discussion on this, I wanted to reiterate something that I think has maybe gotten lost as we've gone through these discussions. Stan said that we have design guidelines which are guidelines, except they become mandatory anytime the council approval is required. And so what that has actually meant is that every new building constructed in the downtown since 2009, every brand new building has been subjected to mandatory design guidelines. That's the way it's played out. There's been some significant remodels, which aren't necessarily, they were used as guidelines. Every new building constructed in the downtown since 2009 has been mandatory for compliance with these guidelines, which means that the staff has recommended and worked with the developer that says, okay, staff thinks these comply, and the council actually voted, and in their vote of yes, said yes, these comply. The Comprehensive Plan Committee and the Plan Commission recommendations on this issue, Comprehensive Plan Committee said, they saw Stan's presentation and said, we don't recommend any changes. This is working for our community. The Plan Commission recommendation was to go back and relook at the design guidelines to see if we should make any changes to them. The last point that I think a lot of us can get sort of confused over the application is the difference between bulk regulations and design of the building. A lot of folks have said certain buildings in our downtown, especially the new ones, are too big. Oh, that's not necessarily a design issue, that's a bulk issue. And with many of these proposed zoning changes that we talked about, the bulk requirements have been significantly reduced. Lower heights, more setbacks. So I think it's natural to say, oh, we may need changes to architectural design controls when perhaps maybe it's the bulk issues that are at the heart of the concern for these buildings. So those are some perspectives, as Stan said, that you just have to pick whatever is right for our community and what works for us, and there's a variety of approaches. So with that as a background, we'll turn it over to Mayor White for further discussion.
First, I'll ask anybody who's here in the audience if they wish to make any comments or have questions about this aspect of our discussion. You going once? Okay. And then I'll turn it over to my fellow commissioners.
Well, I think that some of what you're saying about whether or not it's design guidelines are mandatory or not, whether or not staff's been treating them that way, is the fact that by the time it does get to council, and by that time also gets out to the public feels that it's had no input and is being jammed down their throats. So
it's a done deal because it's staff administered.
Because it's staff administered. So the question then becomes, because there's so much dislike for what's out there, and some of it may be just the massing, some of it may be the design as well. But is there a better process? Is there a better process to get the developer some feedback from the public, which I'm sure it wants to build a building that makes the public happy as well, so that everybody likes the building when it's done and not everybody is complaining about it. So is there a process that gets us that earlier? Is it a public review process much earlier before there are hard-drawn plans so that everybody gets their input, and then we can see where it goes from there, but at least everybody feels like they've had their say way earlier in the process than after the fact when you're looking at, something that just in your mind looks god-awful. Well, but maybe you were there for the explaining of it. At the beginning, it might not have been. So I think that there's something to having something earlier, so that the people who are designing the building and who are putting these things in our downtowns do get some feedback from the community as well as staff. And that would serve us, I think, very well.
Well, actually, to pick up on that a little bit, I regret doing this and not doing this. Several weeks ago, I came across an article saying that members of the public don't feel involved when they're presented a finished plan. Do you like this? Because
And that's what this process is, because it's all administered, but it shows up by the Plan Commission is the first time you get to see it.
Because at that
By that time,
point,
it's too late.
and the amount of effort that would be needed to change it is very, 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 very significant. I'll find that article and I'll pass it on to show it around about how to have effective public engagement, so the public believes they've been engaged in addition to actually being engaged. And as the person who drafted the proposed resolution for an ad hoc design review committee, I do want to make a couple points that my largest area of concern is when we fill in spaces with new buildings. So if there's an alternate way to make sure we have the right design when we fill in spaces with new buildings, that's definitely part of what I'm looking at. And I'm not interested in a change in tenants or change in owner being a triggering event. So if Ballydoyle decides to be sold, that's not a triggering event. And if they change a tenant, that's not a triggering event. But if they knock the building down and build a new one, maybe that is a triggering event. But that's also a little more complicated. If there's alternate routes to get to the goal, I'm fine with that. But we have to take an opportunity to look in this and see. But I'm mostly worried that when we fill in some of these drive-thrus that I want to get rid of, that the buildings that go in there fulfill the vision, and architectural design is part of, not all, but part of the vision of creating a downtown people want to be in. So as long as there's a process to do that, to keep your eye on the end prize, which is to have a core of downtown, which people love to walk up and down, and we just can't possibly, spend money. Yes, exactly. Okay, that's all I have to say about that for now, because I like the direction this is going.
Don't we have that process in play right now? There's two questions. Do we think the design guidelines themselves need adjustment? That's one question. Is the process sufficient to drive us to the end goal is a second question. And they're not, I think they're kind of exclusive of each other. We have a process to do exactly what you're talking about, Bill. Somebody decides they want to take a drive-through out of US Bank and put a new building up, there is going to be a process that requires a design review that will achieve the goals as we've got them stated now.
Unless it happens to be a by-right development. It just so happens that every new building since '09 had a residential component, and so therefore prompted a special use or plan development.
If it's pure business, so we have to look more carefully at before I fully agree with you. I want to take a look at what's by right and what's our special uses. If everything was special use for a downtown building, then you'd be right.
Well, Marge's point is the one that I think I have, the design guidelines, we can talk about them this morning. We've been talking about them. They've been reviewed periodically. They'll undoubtedly get reviewed again in a couple of years. But Marge's point about the process is the one that's most interesting to me. Is there a way to structure a process that causes the public to feel better about the engagement? It's not just this, it's almost every development, and it's just a function of our staff, frankly, doing a really good job of working with potential customers and trying to shepherd them through the process. So when it first comes to us, is it a done deal? Well, no, but it's pretty likely because everybody's been working real hard to follow the rules.
Right.
Well, there's an assumption in there that if everybody who's been working on it thinks it complies, then it should be a pretty easy decision. But it does leave out that sort of engagement buy-in process, because if you're a resident, you show up and, this is a lot to take in all at once.
I'm interested in trying to figure out if there's a way we can adjust the process to facilitate that a little more. Be cautious about the risk of making it either complex or burdensome for people.
Yeah, it's that and solution, right? You still want quick and predictable.
It's got to be expeditious, predictable, and low cost.
And business friendly, but it also, what I'm seeing heads nod is engaged dialogue early in the process.
He's said it very well, so I've got no need to restate
I think
it.
that's all five, and I know we've talked to Commissioner Waldeck about these issues as well, so.
Anything else? Anything else with staff?
Did not have anything. The last thing we were going to do is parking, but we've already got that. So that would conclude our presentation for the evening.
Anybody here want a last chance to say anything about any part of the downtown presentation you saw this evening? This isn't final. Any member of council have anything they want to say further about anything we talked about this evening in the committee room?
I got a question, though. I'd like us to get, maybe not tonight, because we're probably not all prepared for it, but I'd like us to get a sort of a, dates and deliverables kind of thing for this process.
Don't look at me.
No, I'm sure.
Well, we've been a long way tonight.
I'm personally disappointed in the way it's gone so far, because I think we should have been actually making decisions the last time we met.
Well, let's see,
I've been happy to make some tonight. I know you disagree with that, you'd like
yeah.
the public input.
Yeah.
But we should propose some sort of a plan so that people understand, do they come back next week, do they come back the next 3 meetings, the next 17 meetings? When should they expect that there's going to be some decisions made?
Well, we'll put together a draft schedule. What's great about tonight is I think we really got, the staff, we got a ton of direction that we can reflect back the next time we see this, so. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? If not, the chair will invite a motion to adjourn. Well, I'm sorry, absolutely.
I'm Kathy Zisco, on Main Street, 5109, 5111. I was just hoping that, well, I think I'm special, so I would like some sort of a meeting, a one-on-one meeting, particularly
which property are you?
about my property at 5109.
And what business is that?
Heritage House.
Okay.
Warren.
Well, I can tell you that there has been specific discussion about a hypothetical variation process. That's all I'm going to say publicly, but your concerns are known to all of us.
And I have a driveway that goes onto Main Street that concerns me about what you decide. So I would like some one-on-one conversation.
Okay, absolutely. Anybody else? Okay, now I invite a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.